All right, here it is.
During the school year, Monday to Friday, and throughout the entire, that through the summer, that's it. We will have hours at Arcadia Park, and we'll operate as a public library from 9 to 5. And then the DISD, we have been in touch with them, and we are working, we have an agreement, and we built that structure and entered into that partnership, so that in the event that any party was ultimately going to leave the campus, whether it was DISD first or us, that there are provisions that we're going to work through together to ensure that the library is able to go back to DISD. The second part of that question, I think that generally answers everything. I'm not sure who asked that, and I hope I hit everything there. The next question was, how can the city rectify this? The biggest hit for DPO and reduction of staff, the $3.3 million reduction to the DPO operating budget is $700,000 more than what was agreed to in last year's budget meeting. I believe that's more of a rhetorical question, but I do want to say that, of course, the library was charged to help out with the city and coming up with the necessary savings because of the large budget gap that we were facing. So what we did as a department was we came together and we worked very hard to develop a new way of doing things, and we came up with what we call the flagship model. And with that approach, our intent is to implement 5 flagship branch libraries that we already have today that will have extended hours, 7 days a week, which is more than what we're currently offering right now. As of right now, we only have 1 branch that's open 7 days a week. We'll now have 5. Now, the other branch libraries will ultimately have some reduced hours, but we work to streamline those hours so that we're open from 10 to 8 Tuesday through Thursday, so that we're open when people most typically need us. And then on Fridays and Saturdays, we're open until 5 o'clock. We'll be closed on Sunday and Mondays.
That's the stupidest thing.
And then with that, we were able to accomplish those savings. And it's our hope and intent that we're able to provide more enhanced services through our flagship model, but still very much be available at
It's the stupidest fucking thing I think I've ever heard. That's so fucking stupid.
So, staff have passed out cards, so I'm going to ask Gus has some cards, transportation and public works. We'll come up with extra loads, and then we'll just work our way around for different departments that ever see questions on cards. Gus, if you please introduce yourself again, read your question.
Gus Controlling Director of the Department of Transportation and Public Works. This question was directed to Council Member West, however, I will answer that question. So it says, can we give an update of the traffic circle at Colorado and Sylvan is the design finalized? So the answer is the project is still under design. It was awarded about 2 months ago, and it's about a year or so to get that design done. Estimated cost at this point, if we're talking about the construction cost, is about $4 million plus minus. We don't have a final cost yet on it because it's still under design, so it needs to be refined and so on, but this is what the current cost estimate on it. Should the funds be better utilized to help with the budget? This is primarily, it's funded by the 2024 bond, so it is not from the general funds. So the next question is, how much does the proposed budget invest in Vision Zero projects, and how does this compare to previous years? So Vision Zero, again, is a framework, and traffic signals upgrade in high crash locations is also part of the Vision Zero. However, the direct investment into the Vision Zero program is still at the same level as last year at $1.5 million.
Jack, who do we have next? Jack, who do we need up here next?
So another department, who has some questions? So you're gonna come on up and I will take one of mine in the meantime. So the question is, the general fund is growing by about $80 million, but police and fire alone are growing by about $83 million. Of the $83 million increase in police and fire, how much is already committed through things like pension and negotiated pay, and how much is actually discretionary spending the city chose to prioritize? So if you paid attention to the presentation today, you heard that the city's general fund budget is growing by about $80 million. The police and fire departments combined are growing by $83 million. So what that meant was that we had to take net reductions in other departments to be able to balance with the fact that revenues were only going up $80 million and police and fire expenses were going up by 83. So the question is, of the $83 million that police and fire are going up, how much of it is committed versus how much of it is discretionary? Well, the only thing that's really required, that's committed, I would say, is the increase of the Dallas Police and Fire pension system. That is an agreement that has been approved by the City Council. It's been approved by the Dallas Police and Fire pension system. It's been approved by the Pension Review Board in Austin. And so the increase in our pension contributions for Dallas Police and Fire this coming year is about $20 million of that 83. So the question presumes that the negotiated pay is not discretionary. Well, in fact, it is, because the City Council could choose not to increase the police and fire pay, or the city could choose not to hire additional officers. The only thing that is committed that the City Council has to do would be to make those contributions to the Dallas Police and Fire pension system. So $20 million of the $83 million is a requirement. The other $63 million are things that the City Council will consider as recommendations from the city manager as priorities. Because we've heard from residents, we've heard repeatedly from City Council that police and fire are a priority within the community. Increasing pay has been a priority that's been expressed from residents to city staff to the city manager, and hiring more police officers has been something that's been priority from residents. So those things are discretionary, but they are built into the city manager's recommendation. But those are discretionary expenses. The only one that's not is the pension payment. So with that, I'm going to hand it off here, and then I'll come back and answer some more as well.
I'll be up here for a minute. I got quite a few. If we reduce the funding for Dallas Animal Services, where does the city expect the result cost to go? For example, increased stray animals, emergency veterinary care, animal control calls, shelter and crowding, or increased utility share are already underfunded. Fortunately, for these past two budget cycles, in working with the city manager's office, we've actually increased our budget. Last year, we increased it by $1.5 million. This year, in the budget year, is also enhancement from $500,000 to $278,000. Okay. So the biggest concerns there in most of these cards is the EAS budget being reduced? The EAS budget is not being impacted. Working with the city manager's office and discussing the priorities of the EAS and what we need to do to keep both pets and animals safe, EAS will increase the enhancement this year to $500,000 and an additional $278,000 for forensics examinations for animals who were victims of suspected animal cruelty. EAS took that on in 2022, and the victims' numbers over the years have increased. Last year alone, EAS took in over 2,500 total victims of suspected animal cruelty. As of June, that number has elevated to 3,500 this year. So in discussing this with the budget office and the city manager's office, there is an enhancement for that increase in capacity and increase of necessity to care for these victims of suspected animal cruelty. So we will continue to maintain our budget as is and continue to operate. volunteers, fosters, rescues, and nonprofit partners already provide significant support to DAS. I agree. We can expand the city's capacity, but we cannot replace it. How will we ensure that the budget decisions do not shift the responsibilities that belong to the city onto an already stretched volunteers and nonprofit partners? We do our best to try to shift a lot of that responsibility that belongs to the city. We also work with our 501c3 Friends of Dallas Animal Service to shift some of those costs over to our non-for-profit organization. One of the biggest line item increases that we've done in the past 2 years with that organization is provided an additional $100,000 for subsidized being neutered for the community. So we understand, we appreciate, we greatly value our volunteers. If we put a monetary value for livable wage on the hours that are donated to DAS every quarter, it would be about $200,000. Has the city calculated the cost of cutting DAS and maintaining its current funding? And this is the same question with the same answer. If you could share the numbers with us, I believe they're in the budget proposal as it relates to line items for DAS for personnel costs, contractual costs, and supply. What would a reduction in animal services funding specifically mean for residents? At this point, it wouldn't mean anything. We would continue. We do know there are those costs out there. We do know there are opportunities for partnerships in education and outreach and expanding, and we will continue to do all that we can to reduce those numbers and protect pets and people as much as possible. Dallas Animal Services, former DAS Commissioner and Chair, Shelby Blavatsky, as the Board President of the Lone Star Humane Association. I fully support funding Dallas Animal Services as to public safety in this district. I agree, and I appreciate the words. Reducing the DAS budget does not reduce the need for its services. Dangerous animals still require a response. High incidents still occur. Cruelty must be investigated, and animal populations must still be managed. Again, our budget is being increased as it relates to suspected animal cruelty. Unfortunately, that's what's required.
Thank you for Animal Services. I will answer a couple of questions before we ask Park and Recreation to come and answer a few questions. So I have 3 cards that basically have questions about the property tax. Seems a bit strange to brag about years of property tax relief when we are facing shortfalls. If city budget is so poor, why continue reducing the property tax? If we don't have adequate funding to keep the city running efficiently, why are we reducing the property tax rate? So again, 3 questions related to property taxes. And so within the city, we do rely on property taxes as our single largest source of funds, source of revenue for the city. We receive property tax that comes to the general fund, again, paying primarily for police, fire, parks, libraries, and those sorts of services. But we also, part of our tax rate, funds debt service. So debt service is the principal interest that we pay on the debt that we have issued. So we borrow funds, voters approve bond programs, we issue the bonds, we build streets, we build libraries, we build other types of facilities, and we use part of the tax rate to pay that debt, the same as you would pay a mortgage payment on your home. You pay it over 20 years. The budget, this budget recommendation for the 11th consecutive year does include a pretty minimal tax rate reduction being proposed. It's reducing the tax rate from 69.88 cents to 69.78 cents. That is being reduced from the debt service portion, not the operating portion of the tax rate. It's about $2.4 million of revenue that 0.1 cent represents. And so we have continued to hear over the years, when we go out into the community, that there's a request, there's an ask for property tax relief. And So the appraisal district values your property, and the state approves what exemptions are allowed, and then the city council approves the tax rate. So those things together determine what taxes you pay, your values, your exemptions, the tax rate. It's important to remember that about 31% of the taxes that you pay come to the city, whereas the other portion of the tax bill that you pay supports the school district, the college district, Dallas County, Parkland Hospital, those taxing entities. So the reason that the city has consistently over the last 10 years and again for this next year recommended a tax rate reduction is because it is something that we hear from residents over and over in the community, a request for some type of tax relief. Now, that is a recommendation from the city manager to make that reduction of 0.1. But your city council member, Mr. West, is here, and I'm sure he's interested in your feedback about things related to the tax rate, whether you think there should be more of a tax rate, no tax rate, a tax increase. But it's part of the city manager's recommendation because she's continued to hear it from residents, and she continues to hear it from her bosses, the city council, that we need to be making some type of reduction to the tax rate. It does cut revenue to the city and therefore does have an impact. But we were able to make a pretty minimal reduction to continue the trend of reducing the tax rate without impacting the operating budget. So that's 3 questions there, and now I'm going to hand it off to Parks.
Thank you, Jack. Again, Sean Johnson, Deputy Director, Dallas Parks and Recreation. 2 questions we have. The first one is, what does the budget say about community pools? The budget does not say anything specifically about community pools this year. However, last year there was an amendment passed by City Council to close community pools. Next question, why weren't neighborhood pools privatized instead of shutting them down? As part of the aquatic master plan and building what we call the cove, the water parks, part of that involved, largely because of the aging infrastructure, having pools that are antiquated and trying to get them back up to a point where they can generate revenue was not sustainable. And so in last year's model, we could look at privatizing neighborhood pools. However, with the amount of infrastructure that needs to be done to bring them up, to improve those facilities, we don't anticipate we'll have many people wanting to put in a professional proposal to manage those.
Sean, do you have more questions?
Thank you. Sean McGrew, Dallas Public Library. This question is, why did Dallas Public Library cut adult literacy programming? For those that don't know, the Dallas Public Library had a program where we taught adult literacy. We did GED classes and English as second language classes for adults throughout the community. As part of the program-based budgeting review that we did, we consolidated all of our various services that we offer in the programs. And as we were doing the assessments of programs, one thing that jumped out was that there was an opportunity for us to partner with other organizations, and that Dallas Public Library wouldn't be a staff-led service with this sort of program. So a determination was made that what we're going to do is we're going to discontinue being staff-led, and we will ultimately reduce those positions. However, we will go on to partner with other groups such as Workforce Solutions of Greater Dallas. There's the Literacy Consortium, Dallas College, the Wilkinson Center, and a number of other organizations that we hope to have partnerships with that will actually be able to provide these services still, and within our own branch locations where we have some of these services happening now. And we will go on to do what we can to ensure that we also advocate for those that have low barrier education access. So it is our intent to try to find ways to continue this forward through partnerships, but it will not be a Dallas Public Library-led, staff-led initiative.
Got a question from California, please.
Good evening, Sarah Standifer. The question is, what impact will the proposed budget So as mentioned in the video, Dallas Water Utilities is an enterprise department. On your water bill, you are actually paying for your replacements and your operations and maintenance. So our capital program next year will continue with about $47 million worth of water replacement lines across the city. We have about $125 million in wastewater across the city next year with some big trunk lines. We're going to rotate the big ones in and out. But you won't see any difference. You've got 16 projects under construction right now in your district. We will be out of your district and your interrupted areas pretty soon. Hopefully, we've got them mostly wrapping up in this cycle before December, and then you'll see us back out constructing again in the spring.
We have a few questions for DPD as well.
Thank you. A couple of questions we got, I think, are going to be better handled by Jack, who's able to kind of more budget questions. The main question for us was the budget identifies $6.9 million of software license increase within the DPD. Can we get a breakdown of those software expenses, and does DPD pay premium for external data services and hosting to provide a breach of privacy and potential Fourth Amendment lawsuits? So a lot of the increase in the technology you're seeing is citywide. It's everything, something that everyone in the city pays for. Our single biggest expense is going to be our Axon upgrade, which is going to be new body cameras and Taser 10s. That amounts to about 2.6 million of that 6.9. That's our single biggest increase. As far as the data breach and the data services, we do pay for external hosting, but they have to be compliant with CJIS that will protect us under those Fourth Amendment lawsuits.
Did you have some questions for OKS? So environmental quality.
Thank you, Angela Hodges Scott. So the question is, how will the general fund continue the goals of the comprehensive environmental and climate action plan? So for OBQS, we, as part of the proposed budget, there is approximately $2.3 million budgeted for CCAP implementation. That's for our department specifically, but we are also in the process of meeting with all of the member departments that participate in CCAP and working on our goals and milestones, setting those for the next year. That's something that we go through every single year. We based on the goals that are in CCAP, we set specific milestones, specific actions that are going to be taken year by year, and we report out on the previous year on how those milestones were accomplished. And so as part of that process, we will get a good idea of the priorities and budgeting available from the other departments. In addition to that, we will be working on finalizing a report that is intended to, or an assessment, I guess I would call it, that's intended to identify priority actions that we can take. The CCAP was designed to be a 30-year plan. And we realized that after 5 years of implementation, it is better if we can break it up into smaller chunks as well to make sure that we are on track and going to meet the goals of the 30-year plan. So that is in progress, and we will be implementing that this year.
Jack, I've got a related one. Thank you. I've got a related question on Officer of Environmental and Mental Quality. I can't talk tonight. I was around when we passed CCAP back in 2020 and supported that along with all of the council at that time. Since then, we have seen some cuts to the budget for OEQS, and the question that I got was, how are we going to continue to function? We're losing 8 full-time employees. We commit to no further cuts to the budget. Whoever sent that, thank you for that question. Please ask me that question again in 2 or 3 weeks after I've had time to dig into the budget. I cannot commit one way or the other to put funding into something or take it away until we've had some legitimate budget discussions where we can dig into it. But I will tell you that I'm overall I know my district. I know our district cares about the environment. I know we care about trees. I know we care about the heat island effect, and we care about emissions in our district. So it is something important to me. And I'm happy to be nailed down on my answer to that after I've had time to dig into the budget. Thank you.
So another question, there was a $50 million shortfall, that's only 1% of the budget. How does that compare to other Texas cities of similar size? So the $50 million shortfall that this references was a point in time. In June, we presented to the city council just an update. And as of that particular point in time, as we had been reviewing revenues, increases or decreases in revenues, expenses going up, et cetera, there was a $50 million shortfall that we discussed with the city council. Other cities within Texas have dealt with similar. Saw an article that Fort Worth had at the same time about a $49 million budget shortfall. I've seen information from Austin, San Antonio, where they dealt with $100 million types of shortfalls. Preparing the budget is a pretty difficult situation for a large city like Dallas or San Antonio, Houston, Austin, etc. That relies upon revenues, and those revenues are a lot of times affected by the economy. So sales tax is down, either because spending is down or the economy has not as good. In Austin, they actually saw a decline in their property values, and they were going to recommend a tax rate increase, is my understanding. So other Texas cities are also dealing with these sorts of things, the challenges that we face. Pension costs are going up, police and fire costs are going up for salaries. Cities want to hire more officers. So there's a lot that goes into it and balancing it. But at that point in time in June, we were looking at about a $50 million shortfall. The question goes on to say, well, why was Park and Recreation Department, why did they receive a $14 million reduction? That's nearly 28% of that $50 million. Well, I don't know the exact number. I could look it up on what the Park and Recreation reduction was. But it's not like that since June, we went through and cut $14 million out of Park and Recreation. That's not how it worked. Over the course of the year, there were changes in the Park and Recreation Department budget. Some costs went up. There were offerings for reductions that we have presented and talked about today with the City Council. There's other questions. I understand that the city has difficult budget constraints. Before reducing animal services, what other reductions were considered? Well, as the city manager and the budget team approached this year's budget, we were told no sacred cows. Look at all programs, look at all services, as we identify opportunities to make reductions. So there were hundreds of different things that were considered. None of them were good. Nobody wants to go through and make reductions, especially if it's going to impact services. And so you go through and you cut as much as you can on things that you think will not have an impact on services, but at some point, the reductions are going to start having an impact, whether it's Dallas Animal Services, the Park and Recreation, or library, or other services that you all care about, that we care about as well. But in the end, we have to balance the budget. So I don't have a specific list of them, but there was hundreds of different things that the city manager received from departments as she and the budget team considered how to balance the budget. So we didn't go straight to animal services for a reduction. We evaluated them all and weighed what was the appropriate thing to recommend to the city council. So tough decisions for sure. Oh gosh, I have a line of folks over here. Who wants to come first? Come on up. Cultural Affairs. Right. All right. Office of Arts and Culture.
Good evening. So I have a question regarding, for the Office of Arts and Culture that's concerning the Oak Cliff Cultural Center. And the question is, assuming art and culture staff is cut, will OC3, Oak Cliff Cultural Center, have only 2 staff instead of 3? So the good news is that we do not have any staff changes at our cultural venues. So currently there are 3 there are 3 positions at OC3, and we have 1 vacancy that we fully plan to refill.
A couple more questions. Both of these questions are regarding City Hall and the future of 1500 Marilla. So So, at this point, there's not been a decision made about what's going to happen about the future of City Hall. So the questions about how will it impact the budget, there is not a budget line item in the recommended budget related to moving City Hall, buying another facility, relocating, any of those sorts of things. All of that is still under discussion, and there is not a decision that has been made at this point. So there is nothing included in this upcoming budget recommendation regarding changing locations for City Hall. So we'll work on that. Housing and community empowerment.
Thanks, Jack. Hi, everyone. I'm Thor, Director of Housing and Community Empowerment. This question is, what % of senior services are being cut? Senior services are not being cut in the proposed budget. The senior ombudsman program remains, our support for seniors at our community centers remains. What we changed in the merger last year are 4 different departments. We had cultural, our community empowerment, our community cares, equity, housing, and homelessness all merged. And so what we did is we looked at staff that are in our community centers that were working on veterans issues, seniors issues, folks with disability issues, and our unhoused population. And so we're forming a team to work across all those populations so that we can serve more populations where they are. But the services directly to the seniors are not being cut. That's what it looks. Sarah.
Good afternoon. So the question is, how much money is allocated towards the Ron Kirk Bridge and Phillips Lozado Gateway? So that bridge and gateway is part of the overall Dallas Freeway and Dallas Freeway Extension system. It is secured and covered through the Dallas Marshal's office with a program that we have with them for all 10,000 acres that run up and down that system. The police department does backstop the marshals at night and on weekends. And then there's about $100,000 in contract services for power, light, and then some weekend trash pickup that supplements our staff that goes in during the weekdays.
Thank you, Sarah. So this card is pointing out that they found an error on page 102 of the budget book, and I'll look at it in a minute and see if there's an error that we need to fix. 2 additional cards. There was a merger the records office between the city secretary's office and the Dallas Police Department. Why is there still a line item in the budget for the Dallas Police Department? So there was a transfer of some positions and some funding from the Dallas Police Department to the city secretary's office for open records request. However, there are still components within the police department related to records that stayed in the police department, so not everything moved to the city secretary's office. So it's not an error that there is still some funding in the police department for records management. This question is about the Dallas Police Academy, and it's asking, I'll read some, the estimated cost for the police training center and its facilities has ballooned from an estimated $140 million to almost $500 million. How's this going to affect the debt service, the bond program? So tomorrow there's actually an item on the city council's agenda for consideration of an additional bond proposition for a November election. In 2024, voters approved $50 million for a police academy. That is nowhere near what the cost to build the facilities, and so I don't know what happened in 24, that was the only amount that was requested, but there's a lot of fundraising that's been going on. There's some funds from the state that have been contributed. There's the $50 million from the 24 bond program. But the scope of the project is expanded. It's moved beyond just the academy to some other parts of the training facilities for the Dallas Police Department. I don't know if there's somebody from the police department that wants to talk about the different components of the training academy, but there's a gun range, there's a vehicle driving course, there's various different components that were not included or anticipated previously, and so the program has expanded in scope. So there will be a request for additional funding in a November bond election to fulfill the needs of the Dallas Police Department and their training and academy facilities. So with that, who else do we have? Gus, you have some more questions for transportation.
Okay, the question is about the bike plan. Are we on track to complete about the phase one by 2030? And the answer is yes. Will there be a snake bike route to use once Jefferson Viaduct is closed? We're still evaluating the options during the construction. And the third part of the question is, when will the resident have access to a dashboard showing the amount of the bike infrastructure completed? So I talked to staff, we plan on starting looking at that dashboard here in the next couple of weeks and be completed towards the either end of the year or Q1 2027. Next question is about Vision Zero. If public safety is the city's highest priority, why is Vision Zero seeing no increase while police sees an $80 million increase? So Vision Zero framework is education, engineering, and enforcement. As a matter of fact, Chief Townhall addressed this issue, and part of the investments with Dallas Police Department is the enforcement component for speeding. And just for statistics, from 24 to 25, we reduced the fatalities on the roadways by 25%, and year to date, from 25 to 26, we're down by 8%. So the combined engineering and law enforcement work, along with education, is proving its worth. And as I mentioned, also on the engineering side, the Vision Zero includes pavement markings, includes improvements in traffic signals, includes bike lanes, includes several options. So the program so far has to be looked at holistically as a system. The next one is a long question or comment about Hampton Hills Neighborhood Association. So I'm going to summarize it. The question is, why are we spending money on the roundabout at Tyler and Colorado? Again, this was selected as part of the 2024 bond program, and it is in the bond that the voters approved. Number two, it says basically is that it is an expensive option, and my answer is that we've had several public engagements and robust public engagement, and this is what the residents have selected as one of the key alternatives. And then the last part of the question is, how come Hampton has not been selected for asking to put in the left turn lanes? I'm going to look into that one, and if it is something that we can do, certainly we'll
Thank you, Gus, I appreciate that. So with that, I think we've worked through the cards that have been handed out. Did any other staff receive a card that you? Okay, not seeing any. And so Councilmember West and I, if there's some questions.
One that I forgot to answer, or I couldn't get to yet. This was a animal services we support and ensure funding for shelter and free spay neuter programs, including TNR. I verified that is already free, according to the director. So that's a very easy answer. Absolutely, we'll continue to support that. That's not going to be cut in this budget from what I've been informed. So as Jack said, we got through the written comments. We will take some oral comments now if people want to make those. We're going to limit it to about 15 minutes, and then I'll ask staff to hang out for a little bit afterwards in case people want to ask private questions, not in front of the group. Okay, sorry, you're in first. Go for it. Error card. All right, we're going to pull that out, and while we're working on that. Yes, Alex.
This past Friday, a resident of Dallas was killed by a wingman, and I'm wondering how we can hear around bonding and use autonomous vehicles in our city to make sure that they're regulated in a safe way. We have.
I'm going to repeat the question. Yeah.
How are we bonding?
So the question is, a person was killed by a Waymo. How is the city regulating Waymo vehicles? This is a great question that has not come up before. We have a director of transportation and public works who's coming up here to talk about it.
So, thank you. The city has no authority over them. This is a state regulation. the chapter, Texas Administrative Code, I think, Transportation Code 545 that controls it. So, all what we can do is work with the state, I think, and the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles regarding the safety report.
They're driving through our medical district, y'all, without passengers. They're driving through our medical district and going in the porticos where people are getting dropped off without anyone in there. I just watched it the other night. It's so scary, you guys. I'm being completely serious. We need to be aware of this.
Thank you. Very serious issue, and the action step for that, and also if you don't like the loud mufflers, is to call your state representative, because we get a lot of complaints about the loud mufflers. We cannot control those in the city, but your state representative and the state government can. So reach out to your state representative. Same things with learning pods. If anybody's here from Kessler Plaza, Ravinia Heights, there's a learning pod over there. And those are the same things we're working with the state to try to get this handled. I think I saw your hand up. Oh, now I'll turn. Go ahead and repeat the question if you could.
Yeah, I think you said that the residents, did you say the survey said residents? The resident survey, the 2026 community survey did not ask residents, so I'd be interested in seeing what you have, and we can talk about it. But repeatedly, over and over, we're hearing reduction in taxes is something that residents want, and I'll be happy to look at that with you afterwards. So just wanted to get back to something that I said that I would check, but I was asked to read a little bit. On page 102 of the budget, it shows a 5-year forecast for the ending fund balance does not reflect the change in balance sheet correctly. When calculated correctly, the structural balance is further below the 50-day minimum going to 42. When will we be corrected, or are we falling below the budget crisis in 2029? So I may not have read that exactly correctly because I couldn't see all the words very well. In the budget, we have a criteria that we have a 2-year balanced budget. So the budget for fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 28 are balanced. Revenues and expenses are balanced for the 2 years, and that is what we are required to do. We show outer years in the 5-year forecast. If you look back to prior year budget documents, typically within the 5-year period, the outer parts of that are not balanced and do require a spin down of fund balance. But that is the work that we do every year, as we work to balance the budget and bring it back to the city council for recommendation and ultimate approval. So the fact that the 5-year forecast may show a deficit in outer years is not uncommon. It's the work that we do to correct that and to balance those budgets as we get to those years. So with that, Councilman West,
We'll take a couple more. I see hands. Yeah, let's take a couple more. Yes, sir. Yellow hat.
How did the city manager arrive at the decision to furlough all city staff for 3 days? Why not rework the salaries with a 10% reduction for all staff as a means to make the budget?
So why did you hear that?
Yeah, so the question was about why the city manager recommended 3 furlough days this year. So in the current fiscal year that was adopted last September, we had a budget projection of what revenues would be and what expenses would be. And as we've gone through the year, and we monitor through the finance department, the budget office, we monitor those revenues and expenses every month throughout the year. And so what we've been seeing is some of our revenues are not achieving what we thought they would when we adopted the budget last September. So revenues are down, and we've been seeing that expenses in some areas are up. The police department, as an example, is over budget this year. They're spending more than they were allocated because they're doing more hiring than they were funded for. But that has been something that the city council and the city manager wanted them to do, to continue to hire. Dallas Animal Services was projected to be over budget because of animal cruelty cases and things that they're dealing with. The fire department's forecast to be over budget. So the city manager looked for opportunities to reduce expenses in the current year before September 30th. So back in April, I believe, We implemented some different strategies. We eliminated travel, we eliminated training. We asked departments to pull back on spending where possible. We implemented a selected hiring freeze so that the city manager approval was required before filling any vacant positions. We continued to monitor that, and as we got closer to July, we realized that we weren't seeing the reduction in expenses enough. So as kind of a last resort, the city manager did recommend some furlough days to reduce spending. We have a responsibility to bring our spending down so that we end September 30th with the current year not being over budget. So it was a strategy. It wasn't one that was decided on lightly. The city manager really didn't want to do it, but as we were looking for ways to bring down the expenses before September 30th and bring this current year's budget back into line, that was a strategy that she decided to implement. So, Barbara, yes?
In order to bring spending down, would you ever consider trying to lower back down the threshold to $300,000? That was raised to $500,000 of contracts to be approved without council approval.
So the contract threshold.
When you went forward without having finance committee, when you came to the council, were you going to finance committee by yourself or by yourself?
So council gave the city manager authority to approve certain contracts up to a certain level in the interest of government efficiency. We review those every month to determine, in committee, to determine if there's any issues with that. We have the opportunity to ask those questions. If it's determined that there is a problem with any particular contract, council has the opportunity to grill the city manager and staff on that. And, excuse me, I'm talking, just hold tight. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. You can leave if you're going to interrupt. Yeah. So at the end of the day, if there is a problem, then we can pull that back. We have not seen that yet. At least I haven't. But I'm definitely open to your feedback. So if you see anything that's a concern, let me know. Teresita?
This question is for the city manager's office. I'd like to know, we've spoken about the furlough, but what we're reading in the news is that you're laying or ripping staff. So how many people do you plan to rip?
In the recommended budget, there are about 225 or so positions that are being eliminated. As we went through, that's not RIFs, not there yet. As we went through the budget, a lot of those positions were vacant. A lot of those positions were identified as having been vacant for an extended period of time. And we've had a practice the last several years of if positions have been vacant for an extended period of time and the departments have not filled those, then we do eliminate those positions. We also did some various efficiency measures that resulted in a reduced need for staffing, and we reduced positions in those cases. In total, there's about 225 or so positions that are being eliminated. As of last Friday, I think there was just over 100 of those positions that had someone in them. So that would be about 100 individuals that would receive a reduction in force notice. That changes because some of those individuals end up deciding to go ahead and leave rather than waiting until September 30th. Also, effective October 1st, the hiring freeze that we've had in place for the last several months will be lifted as we enter the new fiscal year. And so a lot of those individuals will have the opportunity potentially to transition into one of those other positions that become available on October 1st, and therefore they won't actually end up losing their job. We've been very successful over the years, been with the city for 30 years, and the city has had a pretty good record of trying to place individuals who do get reduction in force notice. This is not the first time there's been rifts in the city. Back in 2008, I think it was, there were 1,300 positions eliminated, and there were a lot of rifts that occurred at that time. There were pay cuts that happened back in 2008. There was one year that there were 8 furlough days included in the budget. So going through difficult financial times, we've dealt with that in the past, come through those things, but we continually have to make sure that our expenses do not exceed our revenue. And we continue to make efforts and implement strategies to make sure that that is the case. And so with that, where do you go?
We got a couple more minutes. This gentleman had his hand up, and then we'll do our animal commissioner in the back.
Thanks, Jack, for the last question you answered where 83.1, only 20 million is required for the pension, right? Just to clarify real quick.
So the increase from this year to next year is about a $20 million.
Yeah. For the police and fire question, like 83.1 million, only 20 million of that is required for the pension, right?
Yes, sir. That is correct. The other $60 million could be considered not required or discretionary. It is for pay. It is for hiring more officers. It is for technology. It's for body-worn cameras. It's for other things such as that. But as far as do we have a legal requirement? Our legal requirement is to fund the pension. That's the $20 million I referenced. The other 60 is more discretionary.
Perfect answer, clarified. Follow up to that is just what kind of data is the city of Dallas using to determine that compensation is a significant driver for the officer attribution? So they presented the hiring strategy today at the Public Safety Committee, and they said that 52 of those, the 162 that left were retired. So that's not even a major driver into officers leaving. So it brings up the question, can we get at least 3 or 5 million for higher rates coming from that discretionary or rest of that if it's possible? That's my question.
Understood. Thank you for that question. So the city has had it's referred to as a meet and confer agreement. It is kind of an agreement that's entered between management and the police associations and the fire associations regarding their compensation. And so we've been negotiating compensation with that group over the last several months. We don't have a final agreement yet on that, but we've used the methodology, the philosophy that we've used for the last, since 2019, which is we do a survey of other cities. There's 17 cities across the state that we survey for police and for fire starting pay. We average that, and our goal is to be at the average, not to be the top, not to be the bottom, but to be the average on that survey. And so that is what led us to the recommendation of a 3.19% increase for starting pay for police and fire, based upon that strategy, that philosophy of having market-based pay with our 17 peer cities that are in that study. But your question about is that necessary? Do we need that to continue hiring? That's a debate that the city council can have. Ms. Tolbert believed that it was something that we needed to honor that agreement with police and fire on the pay, and that's why it's part of the budget. So thank you. And you wanted to go to the middle.
I do, but I have an important announcement first, if I can. So 2 important announcements before folks start peeling out is we have the home improvement and preservation program. It's called the HIP program, something I'm very passionate about, help people stay in their homes. We talk a lot about new development in the city, but preservation is just as important. Once you lose an affordable house, you never get it back. And this program, we have extra funding in the District 1 area because our TIFs are contributing to it. And in the past, District 1 has not really shown up as much as other districts. It's been hard to get the word out. So there's an informational session this week. No, it's not. It's on August 20th at Kid Springs Rec Center. The flyer's in the back. They did not put the who you call if you can't make it to the meeting, so I got that info from Thor, our director. Thank you. I will put this one flyer with the info on it on who you call or email if you can't make it in the back. And please take a picture of it. Don't steal the flyer. It's English and Spanish. If you know somebody who needs help on home repair, whose home is in disrepair and they don't have money to fix it, this program is for them. The other thing is we have our next town hall is a virtual one for District 1. I believe it's on Thursday. It's Thursday, right? Everybody seems to know but me. Yeah, and it's at noon. It's a virtual one. I'm the only one that does a virtual one during lunchtime. So we end up getting random people from all over the city because it's just sometimes that's all they can make. They can make the evening one. So I'm doing the lunchtime one. Join me virtually. We'll be there. Jack, we got Lee Jameson. You got the question. Go for it.
I'm looking around the room at so many incredible DAS volunteers and fosters and employees. We love you all. I know I'm probably asking the question that they're all wondering, which was, we all came here today and we're ready to ride at dawn. You know, we were like, do not cut DAS budget further, right? And then your Director Ramon be like, nah, dog, it's not. Like, we're not cutting that. But then, so we hear that, and then we hear you, Commissioner West, say, well, hang on, not every, we just started this process, not everything is set. I need to know, and I bet they need to know, where to direct our focus over the next few weeks. If it's not at risk, then I'll find other things to complain about, don't worry. But if it is at risk, that is my full focus. And so I just need some level of confidence about how at risk it is, if it's not. Is that fair?
Great question. And that is really the question for if you're libraries, if you like bike lanes, if you like police, whoever, whatever you're supporting, that is the key question. And the best way to find out what the temperature is of council is to reach out on any given day. But we will also be pushing it out, like when one of my colleagues made a motion to cut bike lanes last year. I had to come in swinging with my bike lane people. It seems like libraries and arts and culture are always, somebody's always got them on the chopping block. It's the easiest thing to cut in the budget. So that will circulate. I will tell you on DAS, I haven't heard a single council member yet say we need to make more cuts to DAS and put it in, name another department, right? So it's quite the opposite. Folks are saying we've been hearing a lot about the department needing more money. That's not a department I've heard issues with, bottom line for now. But things change. It's like the Hunger Games during the budget season, right? And this is when you need to stay engaged. So we'll keep you informed, and you should also, just watch the news. The news is down there every single day watching this.
But they're sending our emails and letters and things. Yeah?
Oh yeah, no, that's all good. Like the library's there every budget meeting. I mean, they find volunteers to show up in their t-shirts and sit there and advocate. Arts is there every single budget meeting. It's different people a lot of times, but they're there. So if you have groups of advocates that have time to go to City Hall, show up in a t-shirt, we see you, and it helps. It helps. Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask: is the Dallas Police or the city do they have anything in place where training the Dallas Police Department completes their training, goes to the academy? Is there anything in place, a contract, or anything that says you will give service to the city for the next 5 years, etc., whatever? Because we've already paid for this training, and then they move on. Is there anything in place where we keep them? Because it's unfair that we're training these officers and they're leaving.
I think it's a great question. I'm going to ask, do you guys want to come up and address that? I think I've heard in the past it's a recruitment issue.
The question is, do we have anything in place for these new individuals that are coming in to become police officers? That they have the contractor sorts where they stay for 4 or 5 years, whatever. Because we're paying for all that training, we need the taxpayers, and then they just say, well, okay, I'm trained, I'm leaving, and then they leave, and they're wearing that tag, holding the bag, having to pay for their training. So we need to have something in place that there is, doesn't it?
There's nothing in place that holds the officers here at this point.
I'm hearing it might be a legal issue. Bert, do you want to opine on that right now, or should we leave that to the city finance office? Leave it to Jack. All right.
My understanding is it's not legal to do that.
Appreciate your help. We had a question here.
Yes, will be the last. Andrew, last question, and then we're gonna break to talk individually to department heads.
Okay, so everything we talked about tonight is all been all about reactive what correct is the city of trying to make our city more financially resilient. And I'll give you an example. When I'm on planning staff, you guys mentioned us, you guys eliminating single family zones. Dallas was great enough to do that.
is anyone in our planning department working on this and studying what kind of financial impacts, what kind of additional revenue that would bring into the city? And is now the time to push it?
I'll bring Emily Lou, our director, up here. I'll repeat the question, but I don't know if you heard it all. The question is a good one, and we actually, this is the first part of your question I led off with today, and my question is to the city manager, and it's about revenue, because we can fix all of our expense problems. In my business, when we're having problems with expenses, it's like, well, how do we just generate more revenue, right? And then it's not, you're not hitting Dallas Animal Services versus libraries versus the cops. And so one way to do that is to allow more development in the city in the appropriate places. The big argument comes, well, where do you do that? Do you allow, like you said, like zoning in family neighborhoods, which is very controversial, or do you allow it in other parts of the city? And that's where council's still working through that. So the question to you, director, is where are we at on zoning reform? How is zoning reform going to help us generate more revenue? And the single family versus something else is sort of a lightning rod of a question, which I do appreciate. But there are other tools we have in development to help generate more revenue.
That's a great question, Andrew. I really, really like that question.